In 2004, Atari would release the game simply called Transformers for the PlayStation 2. It was a loose tie-in to the animated series Transformers Armada, which featured Autobots and Decepticons battling for control over the Minicons. Smaller robots that could link up and give the wearer power boosts that would turn the tide in either side's favor. And that's about all this game has to do with the show, honestly. This game takes the base concept of the show and jumbles it all into a third-person shooter and remains one of the most underrated licensed games on the system. Now you may be wondering, hey Jude, don't make it bad, but didn't you already cover this game in a video a while back? Why yes, dear viewer, I did! It sucks. I'm making a new one. Hey, my name is Jude, and if you never wondered why the party's just starting, then I'm here to give you the night's guide on Transformers Armada PS2. So let's talk about that story now, why don't we? For the two of you that don't know what this series is, Transformers follows the heroic Autobots as they fight the evil Decepticons for control of their homeworld, Cybertron. And we start off at the tail end of that war as the Decepticons have nearly won, leaving literally only 3 Autobots left to have survived. And before Megatron can finish them off for good, a message from space beams down, revealing the location of the Minicons on Earth. Thus, the Autobots must find the Minicons while defeating Megatron and his massive Decepticlone army. There's not much in the way of an overarching narrative for this one. Most of the cutscenes are there to introduce the new level, find a boss, and tell you where to go next. So if you're expecting something on the lines of War or Fall of Cybertron with its storytelling, you're probably not gonna like this one. Not to mention, this game is very loosely based off of the 2002 cartoon TF Armada. It features the same characters from the show and the base concept from the show, but that's about it really. If you're looking for a game that follows the events of the show or tells an original compelling story, you're not gonna get that here. But hey, at least we get to watch Starscream get decked in the face by Seth Rogen.
Okay. Now you die.
Alright, so blah blah blah, stories whatever, gameplay time. Transformers Armada PS2 is a third-person shooter where you play as one of 3 Autobots and blast your way through hordes of enemies to acquire Minicon power-ups. We'll start with the basic controls. Your character can jump, use a primary fire, a heavy weapon ability, along with a tactical ability as well. Though you will need Minicons to activate these abilities, the game will give you a default blaster at the start. You also have a recon mode that lets you shoot more accurately in first person, and you can move around while using it and zoom in twice for farther shots. But you're not able to jump while using this mode, just FYI. So it sounds only okay at first, but this mode will come in handy when tackling a later boss we'll go into later. You can also transform to drive around the levels to get around faster too. Unfortunately, the driving in this game is jank as all heck, so you end up crashing into things more often than not, especially with faster characters like Hotshot and Red Alert. Optimus, meanwhile, drives slower and can take turns much better than the other two. But the best thing about driving is that you can run over enemies and send them flying, even before they can answer that cursed telephone.
Hello, Edward Double D speaking.
Anywho, your character can also perform a melee hit when up close and personal, and you can mash the fire button 3 to 4 times to land a combo. That being said, melee is only really useful in the early game against smaller foes, since it doesn't do a lot of damage. And the last mechanic I'll go over is the Power Links mode, which is unlocked at the start of the second mission. By pressing the square button, you can merge with your Minicon partner of either Sparkplug, Jolt, or Long Arm that slows down time and lets you do extra damage. However, Power Links will drain your HP very rapidly when used, fair warning. Though your health will regenerate after a few seconds, so it's quite handy in a pinch. But honestly, the game gives you enough resources to manage without it if you want. Now, which character you pick does factor in on how things will go down during missions, of which you can play as either Optimus, Red Alert, or Hotshot. You can play as any of the 3 and beat the game no problem, though each of them have varying levels of Minicon power levels and speed. Optimus is the slowest of the trio, but can hold up to some of the strongest Minicon combos in the game at 100%, while Red Alert and Hotshot can only be up to 80% Minicon power levels, but are significantly faster than Prime to compensate. And Hotshot is especially great for those looking to speedrun with a driving speed of nearly 50 miles per hour. Minicons are the name of the game here, and there are 40 in total to find and unlock. And once you find new Minicons, you can equip them right then and there, unless they're too powerful for your current loadouts. but you can also return to Armada HQ to edit your loadout too if you want. Plus, every minicon has a power level that will need to be taken into account before equipping them. The power level goes from 1 to 4. Basically, you won't be able to equip 2 level 4 minicons in a single loadout. So the game encourages you to try different builds throughout the playthrough. And if you match 2 minicons of the same color, you'll get a boost to your defense in the form of extra health, such as green, blue, purple, and red, but the best color combo is gold, which gives you nearly full overshield when combined. And these minicons end up being much rarer as a result, so keep an eye out for them especially. And if you mix your minicon loadout with 4 matching colors, such as 2 golds and 2 reds, you'll have full overshield during levels. The order of highest overshield to lowest goes from gold to purple, blue, red, and green, giving the least amount. The first minicon you'll get is Lock On, a heavy weapon which boosts a single homing rocket that does basic damage, so it's only really useful in the first level or 2. But the next minicon, Safeguard, is always active and gives you extra defense. This one is the go-to minicon for armor in the early game, since he absorbs small amounts of fire and works well with most loadouts with his low requirements. There are also optional minicons scattered throughout the zones off the beaten path, like Pressure Point and Claymore in the Amazon level. Pressure Point gives a damage boost to melee attacks, and there are 2 more just like him in the Antarctic level. The next major minicon to come across is Deflector, one of the best in the whole game. Deflector gives you a full shield that deflects, basic fire. And since there are only 3 shields in the game, you'll be using this little guy since he's a gold minicon too. Sure, you'll get kickback near the end who blocks just about everything, but his power level is really high, so you're better off sticking with Deflector. And after making it to the end of the Antarctic level, you'll find your first primary fire minicon, that being Spark Jump, who zappity zap zaps double D with up to 3 targets at a time. And at the start of the next level, the Deep Amazon, you can find Skirmish, one of the best in the early game too, who acts as the burst rifle from Halo that deals decent damage throughout the game. Some minicons also fire in ribbon beams and charge shots, like Firefight, Aftershock, Corona, and Aurora. The latter 2 are very good since they stay locked onto a target till the meter runs out, because forget aiming, am I right? Also, you won't be able to get every minicon on your first time through the levels. You'll have to do some backtracking once you acquire the most important one in the game, that being Slipstream, who is found in the Mid-Atlantic level and is needed to glide across large distances to progress further. Plus, he's a gold minicon, so combining him with Deflector gives you a major overshield. Another minicon needs to progress is High Jump, found near the end of the Alaska level, who, you guessed it, lets you jump higher than regular, and is required to jump over multiple high points for the Alaska and Starship levels. A couple of other noteworthy minicons go to Flashbang, who fires twin rockets that deal high damage for a majority of the game, Watchdog, who fires sticky grenades that make enemies run around like the grunts from Halo, Slapshot, who chucks grenades that are great for sunlocking, along with Lookout, a sniper that gives you a third zoom-in option in recon mode, which not only lets you headshot most enemies, but is also required to be a specific boss in the half point. There's also ones like Build Up, who heals you over time, and High Gear, which gives you a dash that can be used in both vehicle and robot mode. Plus, it lets you dash into enemies and yeet them off the cliffs, like this one.
Ooh, that brother's floating in the air.
Within the game, there are 8 levels in total, with the final one being an entire boss fight that I'll go into later. The 7 main levels being the Amazon, Antarctica, Deep Amazon, Mid-Atlantic, Alaska, the Starship, and the Pacific Islands. Most of these levels are pretty big for a PS2 game, so much so that you'll be running, jumping, and driving across the vast zones. And once you complete a level after taking down the boss, you're free to return to any of these stages in case you miss any items on your first trip. During missions, you'll be briefed on your current objective by either Optimus or Red Alert, depending upon who you're playing as, which is about as annoying as hearing your phone go off for the umpteenth time. Though you don't have to answer if you don't want to, just like real phones, and you can rehear the message at any time via the View Objective option in the menu. While running and gunning, you can find multiple warp gates to return to Armada HQ, where you can restore your HP and change what loadout you have too. Also, water is indeed wet, and will kill you very quickly when in deeper trenches. So yeah, no swimming for you. The first stage is the Amazon, which explains the game's mechanics as any good tutorial should, like how to play the game, shoot enemies, grab minicons, as well as jump and drive over gaps to make progress. Though there aren't too many of these throughout the game, a lot of levels have you jumping from point A to point B, like early on in the Antarctic level. Also, most levels have multiple routes you can take to get to your destination, as well as optional areas to explore and find more goodies, like how the bulk of the Antarctic level has multiple ways to make it to the crash plane near the end, or how the deep Amazon has an optional lower path to get another warp gate as well as 2 other minicons. Either way, you'll be scouring these levels to find all the best minicons and datacons in the game. And once you find the minicon slipstream in the Mid-Atlantic level, you can return to previous zones to find even more of them in previously unreachable areas, like Hailstorm atop the mountain in the Amazon, or the one simply called Tornado hitching a ride on this dropship in the deep Amazon. And there's the minicon Aurora on this little island in the Alaska level, where you could just glide over to reach it, or use this random dropship to take you there and waste 15 minutes. Okay. Now, later levels like the Starship are far less open than the rest of the game. This stage is shorter than most, since you're in an enclosed space and have to fight your way to the bridge, which has you pressing switches to use the elevators to make it to the top of the ship. And the Starship level throws a lot of enemies at you, so be prepared for a real fight here. And once again, the game forces you to swap to high jump to progress through the second half of the stage. Thankfully, there are no enemies in this part of the zone. They all freaking died in the crash, save for the boss waiting just outside the ship. And the final stage, the Pacific Islands, has you use Slipstream to glide across the island to reach the top of the volcano to fight Megatron. This stage also has various turrets you can jump in and shoot at enemies if you so desire, as well as multiple bunkers that are entirely optional, which has you fighting through waves and waves of enemies to acquire datacons, which I'll go into more later. TF Armada Ps2 features a healthy enemy variety that ramps up as the game progresses, of which there are 12 in total, and they ain't called Decepticons for nothing, because they will swarm you with multiple waves of them. And when you defeat an enemy, they'll drop a certain amount of energon that is your main way of restoring HP in the game. So it encourages combat by giving you HP you may have lost during skirmishes. The first Decepticon is the Light Unit, who are not threatening separately, but can swarm you when in groups and tend to stand still while aiming. Also, here's a little fun fact, this enemy type will stop appearing halfway through the game after the Mid-Atlantic level, and will be replaced with the medium units as the main foot soldiers of the game, since they'll strafe their targets and love to fight in groups. But what these guys are most famous for is how goofy they look when stuck with sticky grenades, as they run around flailing their arms about while begging Gary to take a bath before the bomb goes off.
Gary! There's a bomb!
Anyways, there are also red medium units, which I like to call shield units, who are equipped with shields, that will need to be destroyed to take them down. But these guys will chuck grenades that hurt real bad, and you can tell if they're gonna throw one out when you hear their sound effect go off. One of the more annoying enemy types has to be the spider tanks, who, while not being very fast, are able to spot players from longer distances, and tend to spawn rapid fire shots until charging up for a big charge shot that will send you flying. So the best way to avoid these attacks is to time your jumps right or run around the thing at close range. Sentry drones are easy to kill, but will call for reinforcements when they spot you. And these guys are a pain to shoot since they buzz around like flies. Thankfully, they're only in 2 levels of the game, so they're not a huge threat overall. What is a huge threat overall are the gorilla units, first encountered in the deep Amazon level and tend to be hiding in active camo. Their only form of range attacks are these EMP blasts that will almost always hit you and deplete your meter, forcing you to wait forever for it to reload to fight back against these frickin' things. But since there's usually more than one, it's very easy to get combo with EMP blasts. And if they get too close to you, they'll grab you and dunk you like the basketball you are. Another one-off enemy are the artillery units in the deep Amazon. As the name implies, they shoot rockets that will fire at long range, though they can be easily dispatched with a few rounds and will constantly back away from the player when confronted. Roll arm units are first introduced in the Alaska level, who will turn to a ball and keep rolling until they spot you and gun you down. Actually, they're the only enemies capable of transforming now I think about it. They're impenetrable while rolling and spam rapid fire bursts when confronting you. Also, can I just say, these guys are just a Barak from Bionicle. I see Melbourne Studio was big into Bionicle too, it seems. Pilot units are first encountered in the Mid-Atlantic level and will usually buzz around in squads of 3. Once they're low on HP, they'll start zipping around in rapid succession until they blow up. but they're very sensible to rockets and grenades, so use that to your advantage. The more dangerous variants have to be the jet snipers, who have a powerful laser beam that will lock on and send you flying. One is tough enough, but a whole mountain chock full of them near the end of the game? Good freaking luck. Dropships are very common in the game, which are used to transport reinforcements during battles. Most times, it isn't worth shooting one down because they take so many bullets, but they can drop the highest amount of energon in the game if you really need some. Command units are introduced at the end of the Mid-Atlantic Zone and are capable of commanding teams of light, medium, and shield units for better coordination. Not only can they call for reinforcements, but they will lunge at the player with a powerful melee attack that will knock you down and is very hard to avoid. So you should always prioritize taking these guys down first, as enemies they command tend to be less effective without them. There's also the previously mentioned turrets in the Pacific Island level exclusively, which are always commandeered by medium units, but you can also use these against the enemies if you want to. And finally, we have the heavy units, who are first introduced at the end of the first Amazon level. These hulking behemoths will stomp around, shooting basic shots, and will launch rockets unless stunlocked with a grenade or rocket of your own. They have incredible range, and if you're too close for comfort, they can perform a massive stomp that sends you flying. And since these guys have a considerable amount of HP, fighting one is bad enough, but 2 or 3 of them are a nightmare to deal with. And thus we come to the bosses, of which there are 7 in the game. Every boss is fought at the end of most levels, and their health bars are displayed at Decepticon HP on the bottom right corner. Also, you cannot warp back to HQ or unlock minicons or datacons during said fights. I just got done speaking about the heavy unit, but the first one you come across acts as the first boss of the game. It's a fairly standard straightforward first fight. You run around him, jump on rocks, shoot him, etc. He'll also jump up and down the temple to chase you, but he will not follow you to the bottom of the hill, which makes this first fight very easy to cheese. Plus, you know how video games love to make bosses into regular enemies as a way to show how far you've progressed? Well, guess what? This game does that too with the heavy unit, but it's in the very next level. Ouch. Speaking of which, the boss of the Antarctic level is your first real fight against a Decepticon, that being Starscream, who you'll need to dodge by running and jumping away from his dash and sword swipes. He also loves to just walk towards you and spam shots for most of the fight as well, but his most dangerous move is when he transforms and flies across the map. If he gets too far away from you, he'll circle back and rain bombs down on you till you knock him down. So it's best to keep close to him in this part and deal as much damage as possible. The third boss, Cyclonus, is one of the first hard fights of the game, since he spends most of the fight airborne while barraging you with bullets, along with homing attacks that will need to be jumped over to avoid. Plus, as the fight begins, he'll usually run up, command grab you, spin you right round, and yeet you off the roof. And when Cyclonus reaches half health, he will often try to rush you with dash attacks, which can be avoided with well-timed jumps. So bringing minicons like the Deflector and Safeguard will make this fight much more manageable. And what is undoubtedly the best boss in the game has to be Tidal Wave. During the Mid-Atlantic stage, the game has you run and gun through this battleship, only to find out that said level was a Decepticon the whole time. And Tidal Wave is massive, so big in fact that the only weak spot for him is his head. The best way to deal damage is to use the minicon Lookout to snipe the Titan since he's so far away, and you'll need to avoid his incoming torpedoes and cannons to boot. Though it is possible to destroy these and get some extra HP, he will spawn pilot units every time you hit him after reaching half health. But thankfully, they're very easy to take down to compensate, and these units don't spawn on the easy mode either, making Tidal Wave easily the highlight fight in the game for sure. Now, the only level that doesn't have a boss fight at the end is the Alaska level, since in the Starship level, you have to refight Starscream one more time. The main difference being, he has a new move where he launches into the air and charges a powerful blast that will send you flying unless you knock him down first. And he'll even bait you by dodging out of the way for said charge blast. The penultimate boss is against Megatron, and reaching this boss is not straightforward. You will need to either perform a well-timed vehicle jump or glide down safely like I did. He starts out the fight walking very slowly, but this is bait, since he'll quickly start making a beeline for you afterwards. Much like Cyclonus, Megatron will command grab you and dunk you like he's John Cena. He loves to kick you while you're down, and 9 times out of 10, you'll get thrown into the lava and have to climb back up to continue the fight. Megatron will also turn into a tank and spam cannon shots that will need to be jumped over to avoid being blasted away, which ends up being one of the hardest fights in the entire game. Also, lava is indeed very hot, so run away from the lava. And finally we come to the final boss of the game, that being Unicron, who shows up out of nowhere for some reason. In order to face Unicron, you'll need your minicon count to be either 30 on Recruit, 35 on Veteran, and all 40 on Commander difficulty. And once you have enough, you're free to challenge the Chaos Bringer himself. And the game brings in new mechanics via flying. You boost with R1, air brake with L1, and shoot the Matrix Cannon with R2. You're invincible during this fight, but it's game over if Unicron brings Cybertron's HP to 0. He will orbit around the planet until attaching himself as he prepares for a big blast. Once his mouth is exposed, you have to fly in and shoot him to deal damage, which takes about 6 attempts before taking him down. But you can keep track of where Unicron is via the minimap on the top of the screen. Unicron is also the only boss to have 2 health bars, and it'll take 1 or 2 hits before you rinse and repeat. And honestly, if you know what you're doing, this fight ends up being way easier than Megatron was. Okay, so let's go over some tips and fun facts about the game, shall we? This game features a ton of cheat code that you can use if you want to have some fun, like one-shotting everything, infinite camo with the minicon covert, and the best one being the big head mode, which has some absolutely hilarious results. This game features a dynamic soundtrack, which means that the more dangerous the situation, the louder and more intense the battle music gets. Not only that, but this game loves Transformers the movie 1986, in that many cutscenes reference lines from the film, once again showing how Melbourne House are true TFA, ladies and gentlemen. The game's hardest difficulty, that being Commander, acts as what's known as an arranged mode, in that almost every minicon and datacon locations have been swapped around. Remember how I said that Lock-On is your starting minicon? Well, on Commander difficulty, that is changed to Safeguard instead. The list goes on for location changes, and this mode is meant for those who have played the game several times over. If you acquire all 40 minicons in the game, you'll get an extra cutscene after the end credits roll, which is just everyone watching the fireworks as a big old sign saying, "Congratulations, plays." During the final boss, if the player manages to lose, there is an FMV game over screen for Unicron destroying Cybertron. So, don't let the planet blow up. Oh yeah, I forgot to talk about the datacons, didn't I? Halfway through the first level, you'll come across these glowing items that are completely optional to collect. There are nearly 60 of these in the game, and unlock bonuses in the extra menu. These include things like concept art, comics, rewatch FMVs, as well as the many PSAs from Transformers G1. So while Transformers Armada PS2 may have aged, with your character taking a bit to start running and some janky driving to be sure, it is still a very fun third-person shooter that TF fans are sure to get a kick out of. Though this one is hard to recommend to non-TF fans since the story is pretty minuscule and the control can take some getting used to. If you wish to purchase this game, it has unfortunately never been re-released on any newer systems. But the original PS2 copies have remained affordable to this day, ranging at around 20 to 40 bucks. And the original game runs at a targeted 60 FPS on PS2, though if you have a backwards compatible PS3, the game can still be experienced that way too. But for those wanting to play with some higher resolution options, there are some alternative ways, if you know what I mean. It's one of the first video games I ever played, it's near and dear to my heart, but has even less of a chance of getting a remaster/port than War or Fall of Cybertron do in this day and age. Thank you all so much for watching. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I hope you all have a blessed day. Take care.